Well, good morning. Welcome to the Overflow podcast. I am Jeff Waterman, lead pastor of The Well, and I get to do Andy's role as I am here with Andy Ferguson.
Hey
How you
there.
doing, Andy?
Great. Thanks so much. This is awesome. Good morning.
Yeah, normally it's you introducing the podcast and it's you asking all the questions, but
That's right.
you spoke this week and brought the teaching while I was goofing off.
Yeah. How was
And
that, by the way?
It was great. It was hot, but it was great. Just an awesome opportunity to relax. It was really, really relaxing. So thank you thank you, Pastor Matt, for taking 2 weeks ago.
That's
when
right.
he talked about Joseph. So
Yeah. We seem to be a church of cruisers because we had talked a few times about the cruise that I took with my wife just a few months ago, and here you are.
well, but you're a professional cruiser, literally.
Yeah, I was a professional cruiser, that's for sure.
See, I paid a cruise. You got paid to cruise.
Yeah, in
So,
the past. Yep, exactly.
If you don't know, Andy, Pastor Andy here was a live performer, live solo performer on a cruise ship. That's how we met. So
Yeah.
someday you'll have to learn that. By the way, I was sharing with Andy, I did see a guy that reminded me of him on the cruise ship today, this past week. So it was really kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, we got to dive in,
Let's do
right?
it.
We're going to dive in. And Andy, you spoke this week, this past week on Exodus 3 and 4.
Yeah.
That little known passage of Moses in the burning bush. I mean, it's pretty obscure, right?
Sure. Right, exactly. No, yeah. I mean, even movies have been made about this. Cartoons have been made about it.
Right. So did you have any trouble coming up with content?
That was kind of the problem, right? Yeah, there was too much content out there, but that's part of what I had spoken on Sunday is the part I love about teaching or about even these podcasts. I like the research portion. I like the curating portion. There is a lot out there. In these two chapters, Exodus 3 and 4, so much available. And yes, so the hard part was being like, let's simplify this.
Yeah, because there's so many good truths and good applications that get pulled out of here. You're like, all right, we need to be here for 3 hours so that I can cover everything.
We certainly could have been. Yeah.
Right. So if you don't know what Exodus 3 and 4 is about, if you don't know what the burning bush is about, Moses has grown up in Egypt. He was, as the movie says, he was the prince of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And so through confluence of events, he finds himself out in the wilderness, herding sheep, and not wanting to have anything to do with Egypt because Pharaoh kind of wants to kill him.
Yeah.
And so I think you said he was about 80 years old when this event happens. He's minding his own business, walking sheep through the wilderness, and a bush ignites on fire and begins to talk to
That
Moses.
is so weird. Yep.
Has that ever happened to you?
Not to me.
You know the other time in the Bible it's happened.
You mean when the angel of the Lord has appeared to
No,
people?
when
or-
a bush burned and started speaking. Do you know the other time?
Please tell me.
Never. So it never happened.
Good. I'm glad I didn't try to make something up. That's good.
Well, because people are always like, oh, I wish I was like Moses and I could be walking in a bush igniting fire and I would know exactly what God is wanting me to do. And I always say, well, the other time it happened, never. So if it didn't happen ever again, then perhaps it's not going to happen for you.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. That's good. And the reason why, by the way, I knew that Moses was around 80 years old is because we actually get that information from Stephen's speech in Acts 7.
Yeah. So Moses is 80 years old, herding sheep, minding his own business, and God's going to say, go back to Egypt, which I'm sure we know that Moses wasn't real crazy about doing that. So your main thesis for the day was we receive boldness when we hold on to one key promise from God. So I know you kind of left that as a spoiler alert, like not to be spoiled, but we're going to jump to the end. What is that one key promise that we have to hold on to?
Yep. Thanks for asking. That key promise is from God himself saying, I will be with you. And in fact, Jesus goes a little beyond that saying, I will always be with you. I will always be with you. I am with you.
Yeah. Till the end of the age. Right. And so that is such a cool promise. So I want to dive in a little bit because one of the things this Overflow does that I appreciate about it is really dive into, all right, how does that work out? Because we have like 30, 35 In your case, about 39,
Yeah.
40 minutes. In Matt's case, 52. You know, I always get the red light that comes on and says you're overtime.
Yep.
These guys, they just do whatever they want while the cat's away, the mice will play.
Sure.
Apparently, no. But we have roughly a half an hour
Mm-hmm.
to get through it, and there's just so much to do. So sometimes it's like, all right, how can we how can this play out, or how does this play out in our life? And so I want to dive into that a little bit and just have a real practical conversation on how does that promise, I will be with you always,
Mm-hmm.
how that begins to create in us this boldness that Moses had.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll dive right into that because honestly, it doesn't produce boldness by itself.
Okay.
This promise of I will be with you or I am always watching you often actually produces some fear or
Sure.
some like intimidation. If somebody's like, I am always with you, I am always watching you, seeing you, observing you, listening to you, I know your thoughts. Here's the thing, if you don't have a relationship with God as that father who is also a shepherd, who is also the comforter, who is also the helper, who is also deeply in love with you, if you don't have that relationship, the actual response, just first off, is probably like, ugh, that's a little bit scary.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's end of October, right? Christmas is right around the corner, and that's the thing
Yes,
about Santa
Santa.
Claus is always watching you. He knows when you've been
Right.
bad or good.
Ooh, yeah, that's
right.
terrifying.
So you better be good, for goodness sake. Otherwise, you're going to
Absolutely.
get cold, right? It doesn't produce freedom, right?
Yeah. And so that's the part of this Overflow podcast that I love as well, because there are things that I would have loved to have extrapolated a little bit further on Sunday morning. And that was one of those things. That was actually one of the last wrap up type things. It's like, look, this actually isn't that comforting unless you know this God that says, I will always be with you.
Right. And I think I'm old enough to remember when the Apple Macintosh computer came out. We don't call them Macintosh anymore. We call them Macs, MacBook Pros, Mac Air, all that kind of stuff, right? And I remember they did the commercial was a takeoff of the Big Brother concept, Big Brother watching you, right? And this concept of Big Brother watching you has never been one that was of freeing or of excitement. It was always oppressive. And so you're right. When we hear about God, when we were in the Psalms, we talked a lot about where can I go? If I go here, you're there, you're here, you're there. That can be intimidating to people.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so it's kind of, I like to think of it as a father with a son who's 3.5 years old at this point. I'm pretty much always with him. You know what I mean? As much as I humanly can be. And when I am around him, I am observing him. I am hearing him. I am watching him. But as a father, I'm caring for him. It's not this like he doesn't look at me like, oh, he's over my shoulder. That's really intimidating. He goes, oh, he's over my shoulder. That's really comforting. Right. That's really helpful. He's providing. And that's really the turnaround that we need to have in order to have God's promise of I will always be with you, producing boldness within us.
Yeah, and then something happens when we become adults, right? Like all of a sudden we don't want that dad right there. And I think as you're speaking, just comes to my brain, unless you come to me as a child, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And that idea that God is not an oppressive father looking to hold back from you, but he is that caring father looking over you to protect you and to guide you and empower you.
Yep.
So, yeah, are we the 3.5-year-old Sage, or are we the 57-year-old Jeff? That's just, probably should be more like Sage.
We all should be, but that's part of how understanding and reading and looking deeper into the Bible. That's where we can kind of understand these things a little bit deeper, better, clearer.
So, in order for this promise to produce boldness in us and not, fear and cripple us, you said that we can get that thanks to God's power.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more how God's power in his presence can help us be bold.
Yeah.
Help me understand a little bit more.
I'll take that right to Moses' situation. So Moses has legitimate fear about returning back to Egypt to do the thing that God is commanding him to do. And God says, well, I will be with you, right? So there's that promise already. And he says, here's how you can be bold in that mission. here's some things I'm going to work out powerfully, wonderfully. There's wonders and signs and things that you can then utilize to survive, actually, to display that I am with you, to prove that I am with you. So if Moses went on his own might, he actually tried that, and that was when he was 40 years old. He goes, I'm going to try to deliver my people, the Hebrews, from the affliction of the Egyptians, and I'm going to murder this guy.
Right.
And that was his own power. Didn't quite work out. He ends up being terrified and fleeing from Egypt and totally changing his life, giving up on his life, actually.
Right.
I'm just going to be a shepherd out in the wilderness forever.
He met the love of his life, though, right?
He did.
Yeah,
that was God's provision. That's God's purpose and plan.
That's coming next.
Yeah, exactly. So the power, right? So God said. So Moses is saying, "This is terrifying. What if they don't believe me? What if this doesn't go as well as what you're saying?" God says, "All right, I'm going to give you a powerful tool, and that's the staff in your very hand."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what a cool thing, right? Take your staff, throw it down, becomes a stick, pick it up, or a snake, then pick it up, becomes a stick. And then he does the thing with the hand, right? The hand in, the hand
leprous.
out, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that be cool?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's beyond my imagination. It's just so weird.
Do you think that that's all it would take for you to be bold is just that right there? Like, I put myself in Moses' situation. First of all, there's a bush that's on fire but not burning.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Right? The bush is speaking to me. Weirder yet.
Yeah.
And then the bush tells me to throw the staff down and it becomes a snake. I pick it up, it comes a stick. Put my hand in my cloak, take it out, it's leprous. Put it back in and it's healed. I think I'm good.
Pretty much. Like, okay, is there anything that I can't handle right now?
Right? Like, okay, I've had an experience here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go quite that way for him, does it?
Well, that's kind of the thing too. He's still a human, and the same way that God works things miraculously and powerfully out in our lives, and all it takes is a week or two before we kind of forget about that or the feeling that came with it, and then we're back to being fearful of things.
Right. Yeah, it's where our memories are so short, isn't it? And the problems, the sermon series is problem or promise. The problem becomes so big, right? It becomes like so massive in our lives that sometimes the promise, it's easy to just kick that to the side.
Yeah, that's tough.
So we can have boldness thanks to God's power, but then thanks to his provision.
Yeah. That's how he comes alongside us. So it's all of God being with us that these things are produced. The power comes from God being with you. Again, as I mentioned on Sunday, it was not Moses' supernatural ability to do cool stuff with his body and with sticks and things like that. That was actually God doing that thing, right? And so this is God working through him. And the same thing with the provision. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to provide for you. And I read some of the verses from Isaiah 40 and 41 where it's like, fear not, I will be with you. I will help you. I will uphold you. I will collect you like the sheep in my bosom, and that's provision.
Yeah. And ultimately God provides, a helper for Moses, right? All right, I get it. You don't feel confident speaking. So, okay, I'm going to give you Aaron, right? And he's going to help you along. And the whole way you can just see God providing for Moses, even in the midst of his fear when he's like, how am I going to do this, right?
How about even further out, though? So when they actually get into the wilderness and they're literally physically hungry and thirsty, and God provides for them there, like the actual food and water from a rock even.
Yeah, we'll get to some of that even later in this, like, what were these Israelites thinking after they saw all of this and then you don't go into land? But we'll get there eventually. So spoiler alert, we're going there in just a few weeks. We can, because God is with you always, we can have boldness thanks to God's power and provision. So I just want to bring this again back to the practical. How's this worked out for you? You shared that this, in particular, this sermon was a little bit stressful, anxiety producing, and so you're sitting here talking about boldness and power and provision, and you were kind of freaking out a little bit.
Yeah, isn't that funny? that's how God works. But so you and I had a chance to debrief a little bit, and ultimately through some time that I had to process how Sunday went and why things were happening the way, because I had to wrestle with God similar to how Jacob wrestled with God. Thankfully my hips are still intact, but I was like, okay, God, it was kind of funny to me because I'm supposed to be teaching on what it is to be bold and to have faith and power and to know that I'm being provided for by God. And I'm supposed to teach this to people, but I'm feeling like really inadequate at the
Sure.
moment, or I'm feeling pretty stressed or anxious about this whole thing. And so what we had kind of come to the conclusion, or what I had in my mind was, it seemed as if God really needed me to experience what was happening within this message in order to effectively communicate or convey this. Like, look, here I am going through a situation where I'm really needing your boldness, God. And so I had to make these same prayers, and I had to be like, I had to actually rely on these same promises. God, I'm feeling fearful. But I'm going to rely on your promise that you're going to be with me. I'm feeling inadequate, but God, you say right here, who makes man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or whatever? Who's the one that enables you to do these things? I will teach you. I will give you the words to say. The same way that Jesus told his apostles, look, don't be afraid when you have to go in front of the councils or the judges of the people. I'll give you the words to say when that comes. And so I had an actual like come to Jesus moment, like, okay, Jesus, I'm coming to you. I really need you to speak through me on this. And so he provides.
Yeah, he provided that and did well. So think back through your life of different times that maybe you've experienced boldness because of God's power and provision in your life.
Well, I want to backtrack just a minute because this also comes to mind. So it is fitting and funny that God would make it so that I needed more boldness in order to give a sermon about it, and that I was feeling the fear of it. And then I was kind of thinking, man, I should have been giving a sermon on the problems of having too much money or something. What do you do at that point?
That'd be easy.
Yeah, right. Let me talk to all my financial problems. I got so much money now. I don't have to do with it. No, but so yeah, throughout my life, again, as I was growing up, and just before this podcast, we kind of talked a little bit about this, but it was kind of funny. I've always somewhat had this just a calm nature about things, a very faithful nature about how life is going to turn out. And I would always, quote unquote, like land on my feet with different situations and not really worry so much about things. It used to drive my dad nuts. Right? He's like, Andy, why are you not like stressing out like crazy about whatever the situation was? And even it came to a head when I said, you know what, I'm going to move to Costa Rica.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a bold move, but I had no worries. I didn't know the people that I was going to be staying with. I'd never been to Costa Rica before. And in fact, I couldn't even speak the language. Right. But for some reason, I had no stress about it.
Yeah.
And it was just like I had faith that, okay, God, you're always going to be protecting me. You're going to be taking care of me. And yes, I did have some scary moments in Costa Rica where my physical protection was at stake, or my, was like, okay, I was held up at gunpoint actually at one point. Yeah. There was a knife situation too at one point, but even in those, I was more perturbed about the situation happening than I was fearful about the situation. Don't tell my wife any of this, by the way, right?
Too late. She's watching.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it was just this overarching sense of just God being with me and caring for me. And I didn't have to worry about stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because when last year when we were going to South Sudan, some people heard we're going to South Sudan. And honestly, when you went onto the Homeland Security website or whatever, it was like, don't go here. If you go here and things happen to you, you're on your own, right? We took out trip insurance, and every part of the trip was covered except for our time in South Sudan. So, and everybody's like, why are you going? Why are you going? Why are you going? And I said, I just get this sense that God wants me to go. I get this sense that God has something for me to experience there. Both my wife and I, we had the same thing. I looked at her and said, hey, I don't want you to go if you're freaked out about it. She says, I'm not freaked out. I think this is what God's called us to do. And we were stopped and held up at gunpoint.
Wow.
And we had to hire, military escorts around to make sure we got through safely and all that stuff. But same thing. We never felt, even at the point where the guy's sitting at the car with his gun and going, okay, how much will you pay me not to take you in, right? And we're like, how much do I got, and but there was never angst, there was never anxiety, there was never this sense of we're here alone. It was always no, we're here. And what's interesting as I said, I just got off a cruise. We met a guy on there. He got sick day 3. And Kathy and I were just thinking, we were gone a month. We were in Tanzania, South Sudan, Italy, Germany, France, London. Never got sick.
Yeah. And this guy's on a curated cruise ship, and
he's sick.
That
so
happens.
God's presence, just that sense of presence, gives you power to stand in those moments when others people look at you and go, "What? What are you doing?" And gives you that assurance of provision. I'm gonna get you through this thing.
Yeah. Careful praying for those things, by the way. The same thing as when you pray for patience, right?
Right.
God's going to put you in situations where you're going to be practicing your patience and practicing your boldness. That's the thing.
So, and it's interesting because as this conversation goes along with Moses, it does get to the point where God's a little ticked off at him for all the excuses. But and I poke fun at Moses because he's at this bush going, he did the hand and the staff thing and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But we're a lot like him.
For sure.
We forget real quick. I know I do.
And we like comfort.
Yeah.
And we like to feel safe and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you had out of that, so you've got boldness because of God's power and his provision that he's with you always. And that can give us boldness and purpose.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
How has that, how have you seen that play out in your life where now you're able to move forward purposefully or in purpose because of this promise?
Yeah, very good. So, there was a significant stretch of time before I moved here to Michigan. I was living in Nashville at the time, and I felt like I was in a season of preparation, and God was doing awesome things in my life, and he put within me this desire, this like insatiable desire to just dive into his word and eat up as much of it as I possibly could. The same thing with listening to sermons and watching whatever I could. I just needed to learn and to eat. And I was kind of like, I want to put this to use somewhere. I felt like I just wanted to regurgitate everything that I've learned back on somebody else, but I wasn't like in a place for that. It was weird. I was working in kind of some dark atmospheres in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was in a restaurant atmosphere, a bar atmosphere, venues, all that sort of stuff like that. And artists would be coming in, and as well as servers and waitresses and hosts and so on. And those people, these are like either coworkers or they become friends over time. But when you first start to meet these people, you don't really have this like, you want to be able to share with them or be compelled to share with them about who God is. And when they come at you with, here's my problems and here's my stresses and this is what I'm going for. I'm angry about this and this person's saying this about me. And you're like, well, let me tell you God's way about that. And that takes some boldness there, to simply share your faith with somebody. Right. But that was kind of what it was. I was like, God, I want to be used by you. And I ultimately wanted to bear fruit for his kingdom, which is a glorious desire for anybody out there. Bear fruit for the kingdom where you can build up treasures that actually last forever, right. Rather than stuff that is going to deteriorate here on this earth. But he put me in situations where I could have, if he didn't put that boldness in me to do so, I could have just kept my mouth shut and been like, oh yeah, well that really stinks for you, or this person's saying something that I really disagree with and how they reacted or what they said. I could have just been like, instead of saying what I believe it's to be a righteous response, I could have just been like afraid and not said anything. Right. So he put me in situations where I had the opportunity to talk with people about this is actually God's way of handling that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that purpose comes out when you, as you said, he's giving you this hunger. So he's really establishing his presence in your life, which gives you that boldness, that purpose. Hey, I'm here more than just to run this venue or to manage this staff. Yeah. I can actually speak kingdom words into these people's lives. Now, what they do with it's up to them, but you have the purpose to do that. And I think that's really cool that, a lot of times people think that, people like us that work at the church or whatever, that we get all the kingdom work, but really the purpose that we can have with God with us is that wherever we are, we can bring God's kingdom there. In fact, that's what we're called to do. We're to be his representatives, ambassadors, wherever we are, whether it's a CPA office, a restaurant as a server, manufacturing facility, whatever it is, we can have this boldness of purpose.
Yeah.
Because God's with us all the time.
That's exactly it. And after a number of days, weeks, months, whatever, people knew about me, that I was a Christian. They knew my purpose, right, through what I've been talking about. And then what would happen is they would actually come to me and say, hey, what does God say about this? Or what does the Bible say about this situation? They would just straight up come to me like that. We would have prayer with the artist. These are like secular situations and atmospheres before they step up on stage. Beautiful. Right. And I was like, I don't really want to be in like this dark atmosphere, but God's like, I've got a purpose for you in this dark atmosphere.
Yeah. And so you could enter into that with boldness.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to wrap up here, but you've got a little dude on your table there. What's the deal?
It's so funny. As Sage, my son, would say, "There's little Jesus," right? and it is. It's a little Jesus figurine. And so this was part of our reflection from this past Sunday, and it just says Jesus loves you, or Jesus. There's a heart, and then you. And so part of the message was God asking Moses, what is in your hand, right? As he's about to provide for him ways to display his power. And also along with that, the promise of his presence, that I will be with you always. So it's kind of a both and situation where what is in your hand, literally it's Jesus that can be like actually in your hand, but at the same time, it's a great reminder that God is always with you. And so like I got a couple of these from this past Sunday. I put one like in my car, I've got one that's like hanging out in the shower. So like, I'll see it. I'll be like, oh, good morning, God. It's just that sort of a thing like that. Or you put it next to your nightstand, or I made a little joke saying, hey, you could leave it in the bathroom at Home Depot, But the thing is like, people, when you see this, it's a nice reminder. We have such an easy way of being distracted by worldly things, by thoughts, by whatever it is that, Satan is so, he's got such a tactic about distracting us and getting our mind off of actually the command to meditate on the Lord day and night and continuously have him on your mind and to be praying continuously and rejoicing always. And when I see this, I don't know, it brings me some joy. I got to be honest. It makes me smile. And I think about my family, just seeing him around the house, as like sometimes my son and I will play hide and seek with him now. Where's Jesus?
Yeah, almost like Elf on the Shelf, right?
Exactly right. Yeah,
Jesus on the shelf.
Yeah, and so it's just another way to bring him up in conversation as well. Perhaps it's like somebody comes into your car as you're driving them around. Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that you were a Christian, or whatever the case is.
Yeah. Very good. Well,
so that was that.
That is fantastic. Little Jesus is right with you all the time. I'm with you always. Gives us boldness through his power and his provisions so that we could press into the purpose he has for us. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate your work. We're moving this week. This Sunday is our last Sunday in our current location. Can't believe it's here already. Lots of busyness going on. A lot of people doing a lot of different things. And we're going to be taking a picture, kind of a family picture, our last day in our house kind of a thing. So hopefully that'll be this Sunday, and we can get a lot of have a lot of memories shared and ready for the next thing God has for us as we look into our next level or our next stage of problem or promise, where Moses and the Israelites are standing on the shore of the Red Sea. And they got the sea in front of them and the Egyptians behind them. What are they going to do? So that's where we're headed this Sunday. It should be kind of fun. We'll be back here at our location at 10 a.m.
Yep.
Love to have you join us. I'll be back in the teaching position. So next time we do this on episode 42, we'll be back in our normal roles.